Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a very unique deck tech for you. We are doing Cody Vociferous Codex, but we're going full in on the no permanence theme. We have 0 permanents that are non-lands in this deck. So this is quite an off the beaten track kind of deck. It's quite a unique one, and I love it. And the thing with Cody, if you don't know what he does, is he is going to let you basically cascade into a spell and add 5 mana. You do have to pay 4 mana first, but that's a really strong ability. The downside, of course, is that you're not allowed to cast permanent spells, and we thought, well, we just won't cast any permanent spells. Some Cody decks still run a few permanents because some permanents are quite good to have even in a spellslinger deck, but we decided we are not going to do any of that. Our basic plan is to steal our opponent's creatures or reanimate them, so we still have some kind of ways to win the game. We're not going for any sort of infinite combo, but we do have an alternate win con in the shape of Maze's End and Gates. And in this deck list, we're only going to have 2 main categories and then lands. So without further ado, here is the deck list. I hope you enjoy it. So we're starting off with sorceries, and our first sorcery is Acquire. Now Acquire is a really good one because it's going to help us get some artifact and mana ramp if we need it. It can also steal some strong artifacts from opponents' decks if we suspect they have something that we can use. It's just a very solid card. Arcane Endeavor is going to be fantastic, and in this deck, going to be able to cast something pretty big or something pretty small and draw a bunch of cards. Either way, we're pretty satisfied no matter what we get, unless we roll something like 2 1s. If we roll 2 really low results, it's really awkward, but other than that, this should always be a pretty decent card. Beacon of Unrest is fantastic in this deck. Since we don't have any permanents of our own, we're going to rely on our opponent's creatures. This allows us to constantly reanimate them, and it's going to shuffle itself back in so that we can cast it again later on in the game. Blatant Thievery is going to be one of the best cards in the deck. It's going to give us 3 creatures on our board and weaken all of our opponent's boards as well. So that's an amazing ability to have. If we cast it with Cody as well, we can then cascade into some other stuff. Chronomantic Escape is going to help us stay alive, and it's just a really good card to keep casting later on in the game. So basically, once every 3 turns, we're not going to be able to be attacked. That's really awesome. We're going to have a lot of time to set up our stuff, and it's just going to keep happening over and over, and we don't need to put any extra mana into it. So really solid card. Circuitous Route is really good for getting to our alternate win condition. It's going to search 2 gates and put them into the battlefield tapped. That's really fantastic. We can immediately search for Gone Gate, which is going to let all of our other gates come in untapped. We can also search for Baldur's Gate if we already have a few gates, and then have a huge boost in mana the next turn. No matter what we do, this is going to be a fantastic card. Consuming Tide is going to be really good. We don't have that many permanents, so it's not going to damage us so much, but it is going to damage our opponents quite a bit, and then we're probably going to draw cards since we're bouncing more of their stuff and they will have bigger hands than us. So that's pretty solid. If we get to draw 2 or 3 cards off of this, then it's fantastic. Cut a Deal is a nice little political card. It's also going to let us draw 3 cards, so we're totally up for that for just 3 mana. It's really good when we cascade into it as well with Cody. Dance Macabre is pretty solid. We're probably going to have stolen some of our opponent's stuff, so we're going to be sacrificing our own things as well. And then if we roll well enough, which should be fairly easy, we're going to get 2 creatures. Otherwise, we're still causing everyone to sacrifice something and stealing a creature, so it's pretty solid for 5 mana. Dismantling Wave is going to be really good. It's either going to deal with 3 problem permanents, or if there's a lot of artifacts and enchantments on the board, we can cycle it and deal with all of them. Just great in this deck. Dredge the Mire is a really cheap way to get 3 creatures. It's really hard to not come ahead on mana with this, because for only 4 mana, the only way we're not coming out ahead is if we get 3 creatures that cost 1, and that's just not really going to happen. Explore is always good, but in a deck that relies this heavily on gates, it's often better than regular ramp. You're going to be able to draw a card and then put a gate into play, putting us very much closer to our win con. Explore the Underdark is just another bit of redundancy for the gates effects. It's a little bit more expensive than Circuitous Route, but we do get to take the initiative, which actually lets us search for a basic land, so it's pretty nice to have that. And if we somehow maintain the initiative, which doesn't seem very likely in this deck, we can actually get some more benefits off of it. Extract from Darkness is a card that I've always liked. We're going to be able to get a nice selection of creatures, hopefully, and it's also going to fill up the graveyards for all of our other recursion effects and stealing effects, so we really like it in this deck. It's also important to note that 5-drop spells with only 1 mana of each color are pretty good with Cody, because that's the mana he adds, so it's very nice to curve into this on turn 4. From the Catacombs is another nice reanimation effect. It's also going to add to the initiative, so we might be able to keep it a bit longer and do some more with it. Gates Ablaze is going to be pretty close to an unconditional board wipe for 3 mana in this deck, since we have 20 gates in it that we can also search up, so this is going to be fantastic. Healing Technique is a nice little bit of life gain and recursion for our spells. It's also going to let our opponents do it once. We don't really care that much about that, so it's just a very, very solid card for 5 mana. Inevitable Betrayal is one that we can cast for 3 mana, but also crucially, Cody can hit it off of his trigger, which means that we get it for free, and then we can just steal a creature from our opponent's deck. We can surf through, take the best thing, put it onto the battlefield. It's a very, very solid card. Inspired Refrain is going to keep drawing us cards over and over. I love these effects that have suspend and keep happening again and again. Insurrection is another way we can win the game. If the board is getting gummed up and there's all these creatures there, we can just take all of them and swing for lethal. Maestro's Confluence is a really good one. It's very flexible. It can kill 3 creatures, it can goad 3 players, or it can return 3 instants and sorceries from our graveyard to our hand, or any combination of those. So it's just a very, very flexible card, and it's a nice one to curve into with Cody as well. Mizzix's Mastery is another of our win cons. Playing all of the stuff from our graveyard again is basically going to be game over, especially since this deck is almost entirely proactive spells, so we don't have any worries about playing counter spells or nonsense like that. Open the Gates is fantastic because we can get it very early on to get Gone Gate, which means that all of our other gates are going to come in untapped, which massively improves the curve of the deck. Ponder is just a nice little cantrip. Promise of Loyalty is one that I've liked quite a bit, and I think it's very solid in this deck because it's going to mean that the creatures that they have a vow counter on them can't attack you for the rest of the game. Rags to Riches has 2 really good modes. It's going to wipe the board of all small creatures, and then when we play the other mode, it's going to let us get 3 creatures. Our opponents are going to choose which ones we get, but since we've cleared most of the small ones out, we're probably likely to get good stuff. Reality Strobe is another recurring spell that's going to bounce something to our opponent's hands. Reckless Endeavor has the potential to be fantastic. It's probably going to wipe the board and give us a bunch of treasures to work with, which means that we can have a really big turn, that turn, or the turn after, depending on how many treasures we get. Rousing Refrain is another recursive spell that's going to add a ton of mana that we can use to have super big turns once every 3 turns. Sagashima's Will is a really nice one. We're going to choose the stealing mode very often, but then sometimes the other mode might be relevant if we have a really big, good creature and we want to turn all of our other creatures into copies of that. That can be solid as well. Solve the Equation is just a nice little tutor to get whatever we need. Sylvan Scrying is a good way to find our maze's end and try to win the game. Telement Performance is one I really like. We're going to choose an opponent and then hopefully hit something really big with this. Tempt with Discovery is one where we might be able to hit multiple of our gates if any of our opponents contribute to our game plan. Otherwise, it's a 4 mana way to find maze's end, which is okay. Tempted by the Auric is fantastic because it's going to give us 3 creatures for only 4 mana, and if we get 3 3-drops, that's really good. Tragic Arrogance is particularly good in this deck. Since we're not running very many permanents, we're going to be able to affect our opponent's board much more than our own. Treasure Cruise is a nice way to draw cards later in the game, and because it has a mana value of 8, it works very well with Cody's ability. And Venture Forth is another recursive spell that's going to keep the lands coming and the gates coming and draw us ever closer to our endgame. And then for instance, we have Aether Snatch, which is essentially a counterspell, but can be much better in certain situations. Beast Within is a nice catch-all answer to permanents. Prop Rotation is an excellent way to find mazes and or Gone Gate. Dig Through Time is similar to Treasure Cruise. It's basically a card that's really good with Cody's ability, and it's also just a fantastic card by itself. Elminster's Simulacrum is a fantastic one because we're going to get 3 creatures and they're probably going to be all very good because we're choosing the best creature for each opponent. It's really, really strong. Eureka Moment works really well with our game plan of winning with gates. Gale's Redirection is a counterspell that's not necessarily a counterspell, so we can still cascade into it and it's not too awkward. Gather Specimens can be really good in response to an opponent who's about to combo off or have a really big turn. Generous Gift is another catch-all removal for permanents. Grip of Phyresis I really like because it creates a permanent while stealing one of our opponent's equipments, which is really solid. Growth Spiral is similar to Exploring Eureka Moment, another way to get ahead with our gates. Ink Shield is fantastic for protecting us for 1 turn and then getting a huge board out of it. Jaheira's Respite is similar. We're running not that many basics in the deck, so this should easily filter out almost all of those cards, making all of our future draws much better. Joint Exploration is basically the same as Growth Spiral, it just costs 1 mana more. Mystic Confluence is a counter spell that can also be flexible in case we cascade into it. It gives us quite a few good options. It's the same with Narset's Reversal. It's essentially a counter spell, but it can also double up our stuff if we hit it off of our cascades. Nature's Claim is one of the best enchantment and artifact removals in the format. Nurgle's Conscription is a new addition that's really good. It's going to exile a graveyard, but also steal the best creature from it first, so it works really well with what we're trying to do. Path to Exile is some of the most efficient removal in Commander. We need creature removal, so it's great. Reiterate is going to let us have some really absurd turns late in the game where we have a bunch of mana. It's particularly good with something like Reckless Endeavor, where this can just generate tons and tons of mana and keep doing it over and over. Sublime Epiphany is another counter spell that can do all sorts of other stuff and provide so much value for 6 mana. Thrilling Encore is great to follow up a border wipe, whether ours or somebody else's, and get all of those creatures back onto the battlefield ready to attack on your side. And Treacherous Urge is one I really like. We get to look at our opponent's hand and steal their best creature, we get a free attack in, and then it's gonna die. So it's kind of like removal, discard, and damage all in one. Really cool card. And then for lands, we have all of the Guild Gates and the new gates from Baldur's Gate. We also have Mage's End, which is one of the ways we win the game. There are a couple of ways to recur it if it gets killed, so we're not too concerned. But also the deck has many other ways to win besides that, so it's not our only game plan. And then Plaza of Harmony is going to be really good. It's going to gain us 3 life for free, basically, and it's going to tap for any mana late in the game. So there you have it. That is our Cody Vociferous Codex deck tech. What do you think about this one? Do you think it's as cool as I think it is? Let me know what you think in the description below. I read all of your comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoy my videos, please click like or subscribe. We're currently growing the channel and it really helps. If you really enjoy my videos, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description below. And until next time, take care.